one thing that there's many things that it does. There's two main things. One main thing is that when we actually look into each other's eyes, we can't hide. And we hide a lot in relationship, right? And
Yeah.
because we're afraid of being seen. We're afraid of our own, what we might call our shadow, the
Hmm.
parts of us we don't like. Oh no, this world is so much bigger than you think. You are so
Yeah.
much bigger than you think. And you can live in that world, and you can love in that world, and you can work in that world, and you can
Hmm.
make love in that world. You can actually live in this much greater space.
Before we start in today's interview, just a few things. First, I'm really, really happy that you are here, and this podcast, YouTube channel thrives through your recommendations. So it would mean the world to me when you can just leave like, share the video with your friends when you liked it. Together we create a better world, and the more people hear from these messages, the better. And the next point is today's interview was really deep, and it was the first deeper conversation I had about Tantra, and it was a really, really insightful podcast episode, and I'm so excited to release that episode. I created two parts of it. The first part you see now, and the second part I publish the next day. And the third thing is a small promotion, a small invitation to book a free coaching call with me when you want to level up in your life, when you want to dive deeper into this holistic health journey, raising your consciousness. Also, come away when you have it, come away from depression and addiction towards a more fulfilling life. And when you are interested in that, then just book a call, and then we see where the divine leads us, and if we can work together on a longer time period to achieve your transformation, because the best investment is still in yourself. You can invest in Bitcoin, crypto, stocks, real estates, whatever, but when you don't have the skills that are needed to achieve your goals or to live a more fulfilling life, then it's just not good. And everything starts with our roots, right? Everything starts with our roots. And the best education you get in today's world, in good coachings, in online courses. And now I said enough. Enjoy today's podcast episode. So let's start directly, Katrina. I'm really happy that you are here, that I can have a really interesting conversation about Tantra, maybe also a bit about spirituality. We just go with the flow, as we talked also right now about it. And it was funny right now, was a friend here, and then I said, I make an interview episode with a Tantra master. And this leads me also directly to the first question. What is Tantra in your definition, for those who don't know? What is it? Maybe heard it sometimes. Yeah.
No, it's a great question. And it's actually hard to answer. It's sort of like asking, well, what is yoga? And we think
Mm.
in the Western world, we think, oh, well, it's postures and it's sitting cross-legged, but that's
Yeah.
not really what it is. In the same way that people think about Tantra, and if they've heard of it, they normally think of the sexy stuff, right? You're doing crazy stuff, or you're eye gazing, or you're, wanting to have, 10-hour orgasms or something like that. It's all sort of that physical stuff, which is true, not the 10-hour orgasm, but the prolonged pleasure and ecstasy. That is real.
Yeah.
But that's not really what it is. I mean, it's a spiritual path that originated, well, it's probably always been here, but it first started being talked about maybe 5,000 years ago when in India there was this Aryan race that kind of came down out of the mountains, and
Yeah.
they started saying, no, 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 we are the Brahmins, we are the priests, and we will take care of all religious things. And you guys, you just go and work, basically. And they put in the caste system, and they kind of said, okay, here's how it's all going to work. And the tantrics at
Mm.
that time said, no, 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 we are divine and physical. You guys
Yeah.
aren't in charge of that. Like we
Yeah.
are all things. And these people that came in, they said, and you shouldn't be having sex this way, and you shouldn't be eating meat, and you shouldn't be doing this. And the
Mm-hmm.
tantrics like, what are you talking about? This is life. This is all things. And so that's actually the foundation historically, like say in India, which is normally where we come from with this. But what it means to us in today's day is we have this idea that spirituality, the church, God, whatever that is to you, is way over there. And the priests can take care of it. The gurus, the masters, like these are the ones that actually have this divine connection, and we have all this beautiful energy flowing through. But the common people,
Mm.
we're just like animals. We're just like monkeys that stood up, right? Nothing against monkeys, but we're really not capable of that because we're just humans. And so Tantra says, no, we are all of that all the time. In fact, there's no difference. Like, it's not like I am a physical person having a divine experience, or I'm a divine being having a human experience. There's no
Mm-hmm.
separation. There never should have been a separation.
Mm-hmm.
What that means in our day-to-day life, like Tantra isn't about sex and relationships, but it's not about sex and relationships either, you know? And so for
Yeah.
me personally, I actually came to Tantra because of relationships and sex. Like that actually was my entry point. So as much as I love to talk about the spiritual aspect of it, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I was married for 20 years, and
Mm.
somewhere around the middle, I don't know what it was. And we had a good marriage. Like, for all intents and purposes, we had everything anyone wanted. Good
Mm-hmm.
sex, friends, we had children, we were all good. But I remember lying in bed one night and I knew that there was more. It's like I was missing
Mm-hmm.
something. I knew there was more in our intimacy. I knew there was more sexually, that we were just sort of scratching the surface of something. And the word Tantra rose inside of me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started my studies. And this was before we could search the internet or anything like that. And, I mean, it's a big story about how that all happened. But what it really came down to was actually remembering, oh, like I really do have this infinite perspective as well. And when you bring that to love, that changes everything. Because suddenly it's not about codependence or needing the other person to be a certain way and all that. And we each get to become bigger. And then when we bring that into our sexual intimacy, suddenly we're
Mm.
not just animals having sex. We actually get to access, like imagine two infinite beings coming
Yeah.
together, these very miraculous physical bodies, and playing together, and then it's like you start to
Mm-hmm.
experience things that are way beyond anything you ever experienced. And then from there, you start to know, oh, there's a lot more to life than we think. And then we get to
Yeah.
really explore all that Tantra is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful explanation. And you said also earlier in the beginning something with eye gazing, and there was also some other things I was taking now. So I talked about also in my perspective how the world is now and why is it even more important right now that we humans look again inside us to find the answers and raise the consciousness of the collective. That's anyway why I make this YouTube channel here and this podcast. So the main reason to raise the consciousness from the collective, because consciousness is everything, and we can train ourselves to be more conscious in our relationships, right? In our finances, in our physical health, etc., etc. But into that we would be nice when we can go later in it. But now first, you said something, and I'm not sure what is it, and maybe the listeners also don't know. Eye gazing.
So eye gazing, if you go to a Tantra workshop, one of the exercises you probably do is you'll sit cross-legged and you'll simply look into each other's eyes. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is that it's not about looking into each other's eyes and trying to find, infinity or something. Like that's where people get caught up. They think I'm supposed to be having some mystical experience because I'm gazing into the soul of my partner, right?
Yeah.
One thing that there's many things that it does. There's two main things. One main thing is that when we actually look into each other's eyes, we can't hide. And we hide a lot in relationship, right? And
Yeah.
because we're afraid of being seen. We're afraid of our own, what we might call our shadow, the parts of us we don't like. And so this is why often it's important to start with yourself, like to actually look in the mirror and look into your own eyes and actually realize, I need to actually love this person
Yeah.
completely. When I fully love every single aspect of me without judgment, then I can look into the eyes of a lover and allow them all in. Because one of the things about Tantra, to actually connect completely, you need to drop all those guards, all those walls that keep us separate. Because energy doesn't lie. And what we really want in Tantra is to be able to fully connect, so that we actually have, it's almost like the magnetism allows us to perfectly connect. And then when that happens, it's like you become one being and the energy flows through. And that's when the magical experiences happen. But the first step is we have to actually be open enough to let someone in. And so eye gazing is often the first step of that. But the second part of it is that, when I was in Greece years ago, I was talking to a man and he said he believed that human beings were made of mathematics and emotions,
Yeah.
and that we connect through emotions. So now imagine you sit in front of someone and you're looking into their eyes. It's not about their eyes. This is just the connection. And you're nonverbal, you're not talking. So what happens is you're gazing into each other's eyes, and the hope is that your hearts are opening and you're actually
Yeah.
allowing your bodies to communicate through what you're feeling. Because if you sit in front of someone and you feel sadness, we don't have to be worried about it. We just feel their sadness, or we feel
Yeah.
this, or we feel whatever, because this is how we really communicate almost on an infinite scale. Like our emotional body is like this, our words are only this big. But if we can actually share our whole being with someone,
Oh damn,
then
yeah.
something magical can happen.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This I experienced also now with the time, and now even more and more. And uh, when I was starting into this whole personal development, right, 4 years ago, something like that, um, then I was going also deeper and deeper into this whole spirituality, and then I also was knowing before when I was younger, and I I really felt there is something more, that there has to be something more. And I'm such a big believer that everything happens for us and everything happens for a reason, and everything we need to see and learn, etc., comes in the right time. And then when I was going deeper into spirituality, I learned also to love more, especially myself. And then I was also able to love more my girlfriend, my dog, my family, etc. And when we go deeper into that, as you said now, also with the feeling, you really can feel the other person, and it's such a beautiful feeling. It's such a bliss. And these words, as you said, also just as human words, sure, we talk now about different topics, have a deep conversation, sure, but it's the feelings, it's the fucking feelings, it's the energy that we give out there. We're just recording this video now for someone who needs to hear this and who want expand their consciousness. So it's so beautiful.
Totally. Well, and it's interesting too to, in today's day, we're very machine oriented,
Oh
and
yeah.
not social media and all that, but even like this whole AI thing, like, I mean, that's a whole big rabbit hole, but what's
Damn, that's a big rabbit hole, yeah.
but what's interesting about AI in terms of, say, Tantra, let's connect AI and Tantra,
Yeah, we can connect everything because everything is connected.
right? But what's interesting to me about AI, like, so I write books, and so people are really worried that, there's all these books out there that people are writing with AI. But in
Mhm.
many ways, we live like AI anyway. We just regurgitate what someone else told us. We just
Yeah.
regurgitate what we did last week. Even say something like making love or having a conversation with our partner, that we actually are just repeating something we said before. We're just repeating an experience we had with them a year ago, as opposed to being right here, right now, and actually allowing our soul to speak. And then something magical happens. And I believe that's part of how we're going to expand, is because we can see this machine world and this AI world that's just regurgitating the past over and over again. We're actually going to value original thought, and we're
Mhm.
going to value real people. So now all of a sudden you're in front of someone, you're in front of an actual human being who you love, to actually forget about your brain, forget about everything you've ever learned, and actually just speak from your heart. Actually,
Yeah.
just show right here. And there is so much depth there in every single one of us. Like, you don't have to be interesting or educated or anything like that to just be right here. Every one of us is this infinite being.
Yeah.
You have to do is be vulnerable and open and honest, and the most amazing love will happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's almost like the crazier the world gets, the more we can see, I don't want to go down that road because I'm not a machine,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I'm
Right.
an incredible
Right.
being. So I need to
So
act like that.
yeah, that's funny. You mentioned also in the beginning something 5,000 years ago there was coming some, I don't know, some beings, entities, or or just some other people, as other group of people, and then they said now, oh, you have to make that now like that exactly. And this is what I see right now, what's happening in the world. uh, without going too deep now into any conspiracy theory or so whatever, but I just see it, and I just know for sure that there are different groups who tries to gain more power over us people and to hold us small, and this is just the fact. So, and also with this whole technology, sure, this is also now really good that we have it, because then we can make this conversations, we can share knowledge, etc. But short before I was coming now here at home, I was down there walking, and I was analyzing a bit more my environment, what they make. And then I saw also people in the gym, or just walking on the street. Like, I can't take my phone now because I film with it, but just walking, almost walking against the wall, just the whole time on that screen. And maybe you saw also already that picture when we evolved as monkeys, smaller, and we was getting bigger and stronger, and just our stature and so. And now with this technology, it has positive and negative sides. And because of that, I mean, also, as I said before, we have to find again more to our roots and connect again more with each other and evolve in the right way. So because this technology can be really good and helpful, but we need to use it right.
Well, and it's even remembering, and that's a big part of spiritual paths, is actually bringing all the power back here, because that was part of the program, right? That said, no, the power's up there, and we just do as we're told. And now it's like, no, actually, we each are creators of life, however you want to understand it, but each one of us. And so again, like Tantra is a spiritual path. And what that means is we each have internal guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Each have guidance from something much bigger than just our desires or our responses to the world around us, that we actually close our eyes and listen and hear guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So then all of a sudden we walk through the world from that place. And that to me is the answer to all things going on in the world. That's all we need to do, is just listen within and make those choices from that inner. And it may not look big, like it may not look like we're changing the world, we're not becoming Gandhi or something, but in our world, there's these little ripple effects that go out, which are very real. And like, I love my life. Like, there might be all kinds of things going on in the world. There might be things politically, there might be things going on down the street, but it's a very interesting thing to kind of close your eyes and say, am I meant to be paying attention to that right now? Or is it just a distraction? There's a saying that, I don't know where it came from actually, but, I don't know, it was the Roman emperor or something. And he basically said, all you have to do is give the people bread in circuses and keep them focused, keep them distracted, and we can do anything we want.
Exactly. It's like the Roman Empire. They just had a Colosseum. They hold it, the people entertained. They don't find their true power. So it's so simple, but so much people just still walk out there so completely blindly and don't want to know. And also this, I speak that metaphor finish. With the Colosseo, it's just like now, Netflix, etc., etc. Just this whole entertainment what you can get out there, to don't confrontate with yourself, because confrontating with yourself is also painful when you want to grow, when you want to heal, because you have to go through the pain that you come to the other side. It's just polarity. It's also the law of alchemy, etc., etc. But as it says also in the film The Matrix, we just have to wake up. Just have to wake up. And I think it's also connected to Tantra, to that work that you make.
Well, it's coming back to that personal power. And power is a funny word, right? Because it's not power over. It's just simply that I am walking my own life. And there is something
Mm.
really, really joyful about it. And it's light and it's fun. And
Mm.
again, when you live this way, there's a confidence because we talk about, in yoga and things, we talk about the chakras,
Yeah.
and we have these, let's say that we talk about the seven chakras.
Yeah.
In the lower chakras, you have the root chakra, which is how we connect with the earth, which how we connect with society. The second chakra, how we connect with each other. And the third is who we are. So this is sort of the lower triangle. This is life, right? And the upper triangle up here, this is how we connect with God. This is how we listen to our
Yeah.
intuition.
Gorman chakra, third eye.
This is how we share. This is like the upper triangle. Well, we talk about, and then the heart, of course, connects our divine self and our physical self,
Yeah.
which is why there's so much heart opening exercises in all spiritual practices. But what's interesting is we talk about this upper triangle in spiritual communities, and we're like,
Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it's like, no, it's right in you. This divine element, this spiritual element, this God self, this whatever, however you
Mm.
understand it, is inside of you. Every one of us has a third eye.
Yes.
Every one of us has this concept. So the path of Tantra, the path of these ancient spiritual paths is to bring all of these back into communication. Well, that means that every one of us is fully connected to the cosmos. We're fully connected to the earth.
Yeah.
That's it. There is no one above us. There is no authority out there.
Mm.
And so it's bringing us back to who we really are. And then imagine you walk through the world like that. You walk through the world, because one of the beautiful things about Tantra is in many spiritual paths, you only want to be in the upper area. Like you don't want to worry about the world. The world is full of money and relationships and sex and all these
Yeah.
distractions from your divine path. And then there's other people, a lot of people in the world say, like you're talking about, who need to wake up. They're only in the world. They're lost in the world of
Mm-hmm.
money, finance, relationships, what am I eating, all this kind of thing. They're just lost in it. But Tantra says, no, you want both. You want to fully live in the world. You want to enjoy everything in the world, but do it with that divine perspective. And then while you're in the world, use your beautiful intuition to make it better, right? You do the whole thing all the time. And then life is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was coming also now something in mind. What I also normally ask, normally in quotes, ask in the beginning from the interview, what is also in my eyes a really deep question when we see it from another perspective. So it's the question, who are you? And I love to hear also stories because stories can motivate, inspire you, etc., etc. And no one just stands up now, especially in this world out there right now in this system where we don't learn these things in school. We just don't stand up and say, "All right, now I want to become a tantra master." Maybe you can go a bit deeper into that. How you found out that Tantra is your thing.
Well, it's funny. I actually went to university to study math. I have a math degree and I was a computer programmer for years. And then I married a dairy farmer
Mm-hmm.
and I was a programmer until I had children. And, but it's an interesting question, who are you?
Yeah.
Because it reminds me, so Gandhi, people would always ask Gandhi to write an autobiography. And he said,
Okay.
it's not interesting for you to know where I went to school or who I dated. Like, that's not who I am. And
Yeah.
he said, you want to know who I am. You want to see me in the 11th hour when I am questioning my faith and I'm afraid to step forward in my truth. He says, that's where you will meet Mohandas Gandhi. That's when you will meet me. And so he wrote a book called
Whoa, I get goosebumps right now when I think about it. Whoa.
So he wrote a book called My Experiments with Truth.
Mhm.
And that to me is the most interesting part of life. Because when I was young, I grew up in Toronto, but I was always interested in alternative medicine. I was always
Mm-hmm.
interested in, like, I learned how to get rid of someone's headache with shiatsu when I was 14 because it came in a magazine that my parents had. I was
Wow.
always, it's like I always knew there was more.
Yeah.
I went away and I studied mathematics. Well, mathematics isn't arithmetic, it's a philosophy, right? It's a way of looking at the universe and seeking patterns and trying to
Mm.
understand the universe with numbers, with the purest science. And so it's actually
Yes.
a very mind expanding study.
Mm-hmm.
And so it actually was really interesting to me. So that's why like ancient mathematicians were all philosophers because they were trying to understand the universe. It was almost like they were trying to bring their eyes back far enough to see the great patterns in the universe.
Yeah, theory. Yeah.
And so then off I go and I end up getting married and moving to the middle of nowhere
Mm.
and milking cows for the next 17 years and having babies and having all these experiences. And the truth is, I actually was very depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to admit it because I like to be an optimist and I like to see the good in things. But when I was 30, when I was 29, my kids were very young, and I ended up having breast lumps in my breast growing. And my mom had just died of breast cancer, and her mom had died of breast cancer. And so there's a long line of this.
Mm.
And a man appeared in our lives actually as a mentor to help us turn our farm organic. And he was a healer, a real genuine, and he helped me understand what was really going on in my family and why the women had all died. And what it
Mm-hmm.
came down to was me learning, say, how to pray, how to actually connect within, learning how to ask for guidance, learning how to hear it, and then
Mm-hmm.
actually having the courage to take action based on what I felt was true. Well, this was me connecting with truth. This was me connecting with who I really was, and then walking the real path of Katrina, not the wife of, of Wayne, not the good daughter, not the good student, not the good mom, actually Katrina.
Yeah.
And that was the real beginning for me of, whoa, like I can actually live my life oriented from the inside out,
Yeah.
from something much greater than me or
Yeah.
what I think is me.
Yeah.
And so that's actually that whole story. I wrote the book, What If You Could Skip the Cancer? Because it was all about
Mm-hmm.
what if you didn't need to be afraid of dying to
Mm-hmm.
finally start living your life? And
Mm-hmm.
how do you do that? How do you get rid of this brain and actually listen in your heart and really start to follow that path?
Yeah.
And it was probably about 5, 6 years later that, because you have to then live, right? And we, the children grow and life
Yeah.
happens and stuff happens. But those years on the farm for me
Mm-hmm.
caused my spirituality to have to become very practical. And
Okay.
I realized that, you can say all kinds of things about spiritual practices, and I like to do this ritual, but does it actually help you when you're actually depressed? Like, does it actually help you when you're down and out? And my life became very much because it was a hard life. Farming's a hard life,
Yeah.
and I'm a real philosopher. And suddenly all my philosophy didn't matter. The question was, how do
Mm.
you actually walk through a difficult life? How do you actually do that?
Yeah.
And so Tantra came about 5 years later when I realized that on the surface, my marriage was great. On the surface, my life was
Mm.
great, but I was missing something. So I was kind of primed for Tantra, that it was like, okay, I need to go to the next step. I need to actually redefine the world. I
Mm.
need to redefine how I live in the world. And that was where Tantra came in and said, oh no, this world is so much bigger than you think. You are so
Yeah.
much bigger than you think. And you can live in that world. and you can love in that world, and you can work in that world, and you can
Mm-hmm.
make love in that world. You can actually live in this much greater space. And, you know, then life's amazing, even when it's hard, because you
Yeah.
have this inner confidence that's like, well, there must be a reason and we'll find a way through. And we
Mm.
always do,
Yeah.
you know.
So I hear it now also out a bit from the context, one word, and that's evolving. Evolve. Evolve. Because
Mhm.
I'm I'm also a believer in evolving, because everything out in the nature doesn't matter what it is, if it's the plants or also animals. And just a really good example is with the plants. So when you just take a tree evolves first in the roots. It builds big massive roots, and then it grows slowly, but it just grows. And when we look on the mammoth tree, they are so big and they just evolve. They are growing. And when we humans don't grow, I'm to 100% sure that something in us is dying. And uh, I see also in your story now, so how you was just coming a bit out from that daily life, this thing what you made every day. Like I I heard so a bit that you was making every day the same, and you wasn't sure. mm, Damn, there has to be more in life. And yeah, as you said, also with the surface level, there's so much more. There's so much more. And you said also you wrote a book, you wrote more books. So maybe you want tell us, or show us when you have the books right now here. So
Yeah,
what do you wrote?
I'll show you this is the book, What If You Could Skip the Cancer? And that's the first book I wrote. And this is the story of my journey with my teacher. And because for me, I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
I really believed that my brain could figure everything out. And it's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing, especially with the idea of evolving. That I
Mm-hmm.
remember hearing a teacher, I think it was Matteo Stefano. I think he
Matthias De Stefano.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he is also amazing. Yeah.
right. And he talked about how when we grow, we actually grow first through our feelings. Like we
Yeah.
experience something in our body that we don't understand, and our brain catches up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's really interesting to allow ourselves to be open to something through our feelings,
Mm-hmm.
because our feelings are connected to the real world and our brain just has to catch up. And
Yeah.
so that was the real journey with this. And so this is all about learning to hear our intuition so that we can heal and so that we can really live our life. And then
Mm-hmm. Yeah, has
and then
this, sorry, just a short question. Has this first book also to do a bit with Tantra, or was Tantra coming later than in the book you were? Yeah.
it was later, because it was
Okay.
funny that my teacher, he was so funny. So he was electrocuted in 1987. He was carrying an extension ladder and he hit a power line and his whole body, and he kind of died and came back. But he then knew everything. Like he like all the veils in between all of his lifetimes, he could remember
Okay.
everything and
Yeah.
just crazy stuff. But he was so funny because I would be at his place and I'd be crying about something, like, whatever, during the healing process. And he'd look at me and he'd say, I don't understand people. I said, people, we have the option to walk around fully orgasmic all day long. And yet
Yeah.
we choose to be stressed out. He says we choose it.
There comes also in mind a really good saying. How was it? People choose sometimes a familiar hell over unfamiliar heaven.
Yes, that's like 100% true. And
Yeah.
he would say little things like that to me, or he would sit down with my husband and I, and of course I was only 29. He was 30. Like and we were sitting
Okay,
there
yeah.
and he'd say, if you're going to make love, I don't know why you would bother if it wasn't for 3 hours minimum. And the two of us are just like, what? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know
What?
what you
Yeah.
do for 3 hours. So it was like these little seeds were planted in me
Yeah.
way before Tantra ever came around. And then
Great.
when Tantra came by, like, say, 5, 6 years later,
Mm-hmm.
my husband actually wasn't interested. Because I kind of only thought it was about sex. And he says, there's nothing wrong with our sex life. There's no point worrying about that. And I was like, huh. So I actually had to start studying the spirituality of it and understanding the
Yeah.
world and all that. And then eventually I said to him, I said, no, I need to explore this, how this works in intimacy. So we went to Jamaica and we had 1 week that we just focused on each other. We played with non-ejaculatory sex. We played with slow intimacy and we played with polarity, playing with that in the body. And then we just explored. And there was a lot, I mean, there's a lot of stories about that. But
Mm.
at one moment, we were making love. I was on top, and all of a sudden, this energy shot up through my body, like up through my crown chakra. And I
Yeah.
literally was one of these experiences. And after that, I just knew, I just knew Tantra. I knew all these memories came back, everything. But it wasn't like I could write it all out. It was just this wholeness that I now understood. And I
Yeah.
knew that I was supposed to teach.
Mm-hmm.
So I started, but I didn't know how I fit into the current Tantra world. So I started going to retreats and started doing things, trying to see what was going on. But
Mm.
nothing that anyone was teaching was what I knew. And so I felt called. I had to create an online course, an 8-week online course about Tantra, and it was called The Foundations of Tantric Intimacy. And
Nice.
you argue with it, right? You're like, I can't teach an online course in Tantra. That's crazy. But then, and so I create this school, and I wrote this course, and it was all
Yeah.
videos, and it's still running, this course. And it was so funny because I thought, well, how will people even find me? And then
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a friend of mine because I still was quite nervous about even admitting to people that I was going to teach Tantra, because I thought, oh my God, people are going to think I'm just having orgies every weekend. And my kids were teenagers at this time. And I said, what do you think if I kind of come out that I teach Tantra? And my kids were like, Mom, it's totally cool. It's great. Like it's no problem. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, don't you understand? He said, the world is addicted to porn, and Tantra is the opposite of that. So I
Oh,
wrote an
yeah.
article called Tantra is the opposite of porn, and it went viral all over
Mm.
the world, like hundreds of thousands of people. It was translated into like 50 languages. It was absolutely insane. And it filled my school. Like suddenly
Wow.
people found me because of this random article I wrote about Tantra and porn.
Yeah.
And so people started, studying with me, and they were all in, and they were really, and they said to me, they said, we need a book. I want a book that I can dive deeper into this. And I was like,
Yeah.
there isn't a book. I don't have a book to give you. So I wrote a book. And this is why this book was,
Ta-ta.
and this is Tantric Intimacy, Discover the Magic of True Connection. And and so this is really the foundation of all the Tantra I
Mm-hmm.
teach. And because the thing is, you can only teach so much. Like you have to teach enough that we are clear enough to hear our own wisdom. And then once you're there, that's your exploration from there. Like I can't write a book about the infinite possible, things that could happen. all I need to do is sort of get you to a point where we unlearn everything that doesn't help. And like, for example, the first whole section of this is actually redefining love so that we actually can connect with people. And so
Mm-hmm.
from there, we go on our own journey. We become our own teachers. We become our own expanded selves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's that book. And then I was traveling in 2018. I had divorced and I was single and my kids had grown up and they were all over the world. And I was traveling. I gave everything away and I just got down to a backpack
Wow.
and I
Okay.
headed off into the world. And I
Huh.
stayed with students, I stayed with families who wanted to learn English. I stayed by myself and I just followed wherever I was meant to go. And at one point, I was staying with a family down in Guadeloupe, down in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And they took me out for this big dinner and they wanted me to eat this fish. And basically, it was this, I ate some of the fish and then it came to the head and they said, well, you have to eat the head. And I'm like, what? I don't want to eat the
What?
head. And they said, well, you have to at least eat the eyeballs. And I'm
Oh.
not an interesting eater. I am a very boring eater, right? So anyway, I went through
Damn.
this whole process of just losing my mind with this having to eat eyeballs. And I finally tried because I was like, Katrina, just eat the damn eyeball, right? And
Damn.
I put it in my mouth and it was disgusting and it was this whole story. But anyway, I
No.
went home and I messaged one of my friends and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I ate this damn eyeball. It was so horrible. And my friend says, why didn't you just say no? And I was like, I could have said no because I am a real people pleaser. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that pulls me from my truth is I'm afraid of hurting your feelings. So I ended up writing this book called You Don't Have to Eat the Eyeballs. And it's
Funny. No. Okay. Cool.
because we do this all the time. And as soon as we do something that isn't our truth, we are now off our path,
Yeah, that's also
right?
such an important point.
And so this book is all about people pleasing and self-love, that we really have to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a story of stories from my travels and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of
Yeah.
outside the tantra, but it's not. And then this summer, I wrote this book
Whoa,
called,
also a fourth divine
yeah,
union of the masculine and feminine. Yeah, this was also a topic I want to go in today's
yeah,
conversation.
because this is a big in tantra, there's it's a lot about union, right? It's a lot about actually
Yeah.
coming back in connection with
Yin yang.
ourselves,
Yeah.
with each other, with us in the universe, with us in the divine. And the
Mm-hmm.
masculine and feminine is how we do it, but it's not what we think. It's not a lot of what we think the masculine and feminine is comes out of the patriarchal paradigm. It comes out of the domination paradigm where we're separate. And masculine is like big and strong and tough and angry and
Yeah.
control. And the feminine is sweet and nice and pleasing and, all this like nonsense. But that's not like the masculine and feminine are universal energies that are meant to come together in union to experience oneness. And we can do that with each other. We can do it within. So it's a huge passion of mine right now is sharing that, you know, because that's what I think in terms of even evolution, so many people are seeking that. Like
Yeah.
we know more is possible. We know that we're not meant to, even in relationship, we're not meant to be so separate all the time. Like we can be separate in our own evolution, our own individual, but together, there's so much more possible. And when we can polarize into the masculine and feminine, and it doesn't have to be gendered, but magic is possible. Like
Mm.
absolute, the most beautiful, loving wholeness is possible in our relationships. And so that's my most recent book, and I'm really excited to share about that too.
All right. Yeah. So before we make forward, I really have to go on the toilet. So, and I'm all about authenticity even more now. We just make a short break, yeah. Thank you so much for tuning into a place for open minds today. I hope you enjoyed this journey. And remember, transformation begins with an open mind and a willingness to explore new perspectives. And something really, really important for me to say is, if you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review my podcast for your favorite platform. Doesn't matter if it's now YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Your feedback helps me grow and reach more open minds like yours. And I don't run any ads, etc. for an interruption-free experience. And because of that, this podcast thrives through your recommendations. Stay connected with me on social media. All the links you find in the video or podcast description. And until next time, embrace the journey, trust the process, and continue striving to become the best version of yourself. Keep shining your light, and I catch you in the next episode. As you know, as always, here's much love and peace. Your host Felix Poyel. See ya. Peace out.